Hello everyone, welcome back to the SN Studio for some review of the new campaign book of the Beta-Garmon cluster.
Yeah.
Or as I call it, the Beta-Garmon.
Yeah. Gammon. Love some gammon now. So yeah, it's the second campaign book.
Yep.
And we have been looking forward to it a lot. We did enjoy the Siege of Chthoniya very, very much.
It was good.
And this is the second book, which has been something that a lot of people have been waiting for.
Yes. Well, you were a little disappointed that it is Sons of Horus again,
Yes.
of course, versus the White Scars and some Solar Auxilia. Of course, the Shattered Legions are mixed in there.
Yes.
And Black Shields.
Yeah, I know. So we're going to go straight into the book. We're going to split up this review into different sections. As DC has already mentioned, we've got the Black Shields, we've got the Shattered Legions, we've got the Solar Auxilia with some new tasty rules in there as well. We've got some special characters, again, in this book as well. So there's a lot as well. I think there's more in this book
than the previous
campaign book. So yeah, a lot to look forward to, and excited to chat about it all. Next up, let's start all with the campaign itself, and that's coming right up.
So, yes, we have a set of core missions and, of course, Apex missions we'll get into in a moment. Big thank you first to Games Workshop for sending us the rules ahead of time to allow us to have a little peek into what was going on.
And some characters as well, but we'll go into that later.
We'll go into that in a moment. So, first and foremost, of course, it is a new battle area, new war zone for the Horus Heresy. And, of course, as we briefly mentioned at the start, they have the main combatants, the White Scars, the Shattered Legions, and then the Sons of Horus with some Solar Auxilia mixed in on both sides, I believe. It's a weighty book. We haven't read it page to page yet. So it takes some
we just have PDFs right now.
Yes,
so,
we do have.
This is why the book isn't there. But the book's a bit delayed.
Yes, but it is what it is. Now, what we can see from the core missions from this campaign is there's a lot of similarities to the Siege of Chthoniya.
It's the same mission.
It's the same mission.
It's not a lot of. It's exactly so. So this is something a little bit. Obviously, we're gonna review it properly. We don't want to be positive constantly, but the five. I think there's 5 missions. The 5 core missions in the book are exactly the same ones as the Siege of Chthoniya. So I was a bit saddened about that because it's quite easy to change up the missions. Like we've done it for No Retreats a couple of times now, and it's quite easy to just change them up slightly or just something very, very different. I always say the same. I think that we should have like a kill point one, something different. But to have the exact same missions
is
a bit sad.
It's a bit sad, especially when you're obviously paying for that book. Yes. And you're going to get the same if you've bought the Siege of Chthoniya book. You already have the core missions essentially. There are some, I believe, some changes in terms of the special rules for the
campaign itself.
Exactly, but there are also some of the similar ones you'll see in terms of the special abilities and rules as the previous campaign.
I don't mind that. We enjoyed that in the last campaign.
Yeah, and in terms of campaigns, we are going to be releasing one, of course, first for everyone to see on YouTube, and then the rest of the campaign when you get stuck in, like before, into SN+. So if you are a member of our SN Plus content, then you can get, of course, access to all of the Horus Heresy reports we currently have, and the new campaign.
And the Siege of Chthoniya campaign.
And the Siege of Chthoniya campaign, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I think it was 7 battles in total.
Yeah.
It was great fun, now, we are very interested in the Apex missions. We've enjoyed them a lot in the last book. There is 2 Apex missions in this one.
There are.
Obviously, they are designated for the White Scars and the Sons of Horus. But it actually states that if you want to play them with different legions, you can. We want to go the proper route path, so we are waiting for some reinforcements for both the Sons of Horus and the White Scars themselves. But we have already recorded the first segment with some smaller armies, and we have enjoyed it a lot already. So we're looking forward to those reinforcements coming over.
I actually love the Apex missions. This one, there are 2, obviously, and the first one is like a King of the Hill style mountain battle, so I'm going to call it, between the 2 Primarchs. So you pick 2 Primarchs, and of course it's the Khan and Horus in respect to it. They start in base contact right in the center, and you're meant to have it on like a structure or a mound or whatever in the middle of the battlefield, and then there's objective markers around that you have to get as part of normal course of the game. But at the same time, your Primarchs are going toe-to-toe right in the center. You're not allowed to target them or anything. They're just having a solo fight. And they also have, I believe, in the rules, it will not die 3+. They both get that.
So it's like it's cool. And I've never seen something like that before, where two Primarchs start the game, or start the mission in combat. We will be using this mission as the last campaign mission, obviously, because it makes a bit more sense. But the other mission, which is the minefields one.
Yes, there's one where you essentially have to get through a minefield to an extraction zone while your opponent is obviously attacking you and you are the defender. And the defender has 2 deployment zones, and you have to break your army up. And then the attacker weirdly has no deployment zone. And then you just select amongst the, I guess...
It's a bit complex.
The other area,
but the Apex missions are a bit complex. Once you get your head around them, they're much better. We've got some really cool terrain as well for this campaign. We've got some trench warfare terrain that has just come in, so you will see that on SM Plus as well in a few of those battles. So that is the main concept of the campaign part of the book itself, but there's so much to dwell in, and I think people will be, same as we are, more excited about the Black Shields, the Shattered Legions, and the extra bits at the end.
I'm just a little bit sad it wasn't all about the word bearers, you know, with Sons of Horus again.
I think it was a massive missed opportunity to not have 2 complete different legions as a campaign book. Having the Sons of Horus again, I know they're the poster boys of this edition, but they could have changed it up. And it does say in many occasions that you can play any legion, but I would have liked the fluff in the book itself. Would have been another legion itself. So anyway, let's go into the next part of the book, and let's talk about, what do you want to talk about? Shadow Legions?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay, Shadow Legions coming right up.
Okay, Shattered Legions. Now, we've had the book for a few days. We've poured through it. Of course, we've had day jobs, so we're trying to do it amongst everything else. So
bear with us.
If
we just had it for a couple of days.
If we miss anything, then don't forget,
comment in the comment section. We need to learn as well.
But just be polite.
Be nice.
I've actually, with Pardo, we did record a battle report, bit of a small showcase of what the Shattered Legions can do, which you can also see on the channel. And
it's out at the same time as this, so
exactly,
you can go and see it.
I'm going to go into a little bit of how the Shattered Legions operate, and then, of course, we can talk about some of the specifics we've seen and what we've experienced so far. I think I'm pretty happy with it overall.
It's a very different type of what Shadow Legions used to work. It's very complex. There's actually designer's notes telling you how complex they are, and telling you that you shouldn't really use them for tournaments or competitive or timed games, just because it's more complex than playing just a normal Legion. And I understand. Once you get used to it, I think it'll be much better, but it comes to your opponent having to think about what's happening more than you. So.
And if you're new to Horus Heresy, you're thinking, well, what are Shattered Legions? Within the story, the lore, it's mostly predominantly to do with the loyalists who got massacred at Istavan, and
the Salamanders, for example,
and the Raven Guard, and essentially the Iron Hands. They cobbled together the remaining Marines, and they kind of created these almost like guerrilla forces where they would go out and disrupt the traitors and attack supply lines, everything else, and just try and cause absolute carnage for the traitors as they were obviously advancing on their way to Terra. So these Shattered Legions are like the remnants of the legions that got hit really hard at the early part of the Heresy, and then played not so much as like they played a big role in it, but they played like a different kind of role to what traditional legions that were. But also in the book, you can also use Shattered Legions for traitors, because in certain campaigns, as you can imagine, around the galaxy, there were places where traitors, companies, and various groups got hit quite hard, and they had to come together and employ some of the same tactics.
It's happened in warfare throughout the years, even in real life, not it's just gaming. It happens. So it's a great little segment, and obviously, like I always say, it refreshes the Heresy scene a bit more, because it's not just legions against legions. This Shattered Legions is very different to play, and it's great to play against and play. And by the way, the battle report is with traitor legions, just because we wanted to change it up completely and not have the normal loyalist as you would see. Do you want to explain? First of all, I think we should explain like the little right of war they get. It's not a right of war, but they get an extra rule where veterans.
So instead of your, I guess, Legion trait, you essentially, it feels like a right of war rather than Legion trait, but you essentially get all veterans can become troops and get line. So I guess that's to facilitate the idea that these guys have been around for a long time. They're very good at what they do, but because they're the remnants of the Legion, they're not like brand new recruits, etc. So they are veterans. But then you can't use any specific units to do with particular legions.
Yes.
So like fire drakes, for example,
or upgrades or anything like that.
Galvoback, or things like that. So because you are meant to be in the new Legion Astartes brackets Shattered Legions.
Yeah.
And then essentially the Legion trait takes over.
Yeah. Apart from that, you also have, if you put any of these veterans into transports, they do become support choice instead. So that's a little extra bit that you can
do. Is that to do with perhaps the scarcity of their supplies and stuff? So if they have a transport, they're not going to be lying, or
I guess it's just I think it's just to not like make it very competitive and make it more fluffy than something else.
And I'm sure that the people, the tournament goers and the Math Hammer people are probably going to look at this and go, if I use X, Y, and Z combos, I can make quite a strong list. But essentially what happens is that your standard Legion abilities is replaced by these things called mutable tactics. And the tactics come in a major, a minor, and a flaw. What does that mean? Well, what happens is because these units are cobbled together, I should say, between the various different legions, you'll have a number of, say, Salamanders, Iron Hands, and Raven Guard in a unit, all coming from different tactical traits and cultures from in their legions, and they're bringing that to the squads themselves. So it'd be quite difficult to do it by model.
Yeah.
So what they've done is they've done a major minor format for each squad. So depending on how many models are of a particular legion are in a unit, that then either makes it a minor or a major. You can pick up to 3, but a minimum of 2.
Yes. So, like this is just stated, I was just about to say that you can have a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 3, so you can't overdo it. I think again it comes back to complexity. You don't really want to. We played in the Barry Port with 3 legions. It was good. But we did play a smaller game, so that is just one of the negatives from being. But like DC said, there is a major, a minor, and a flaw, and it all depends on how many models you actually have on the units. So obviously the major goes to the unit that has the most of that legion, and then obviously the minor would go to the one with the minimum.
But the complexity is that can change during the flow of the game. So each start of each phase, you basically have to designate what would be the major. I guess count the models of which is the most in the unit. But then if you have a minor, but they are equal, so say you have 3 Marines and 3 Marines in a squad of 10, then you can choose.
Yeah.
But you have to let your opponent know, and that's where the complexity comes in for tournament play and everything else. It can get quite, probably have a bit of admin involved in making sure you know which is which. It also states that you can do it during, to make things a little bit quicker, you can do it during, for example, if you're going to shoot that unit, then you can declare what is what in that unit. Otherwise,
it's every phase, so you have to basically make sure what is the major and minor in every phase. But again, designers note there, telling you that you don't have to check it every single time, because some units will not get into combat, for example, in a phase, so there's no point in counting those up. And it's great. And the floor goes to obviously the minor parts of that unit itself. So whatever legion is the minor also gets the floor.
Yes.
And the major and the minor are perks. It's the floor that isn't the perk.
Yes, exactly.
And
we've actually we've seen that some of them can be quite detrimental in some cases.
Yes.
I'll give you an example that we played during where a Night Lord's Contemptor, because if it's a single model with a certain legion, then they have the minor and then they have the floor. They don't get the major. And it's the same for if, for example, you take a unit of 10 Marines, you have 5 of them, say, a Raven Guard. Once the others are taken away and it's just Raven Guard left, they only get the minor and then the floor for the Raven Guard.
They've basically done it so you don't start just using full units of one thing or the other.
Whole point is to mix it up, right? That's the whole fun of the Shattered Legions. And then in terms of characters, your characters don't get Warlord traits as standard. They get hero abilities within the mutable tactics, depending on the legion they're in. So again, in the Night Lord's example, you gain Fear 1 if you are a character, an independent character. You can take the weapons from the armory of the Night Lord's Legion, but other things you can't take, like Warlord traits or rights of war and things like that. They don't happen in the Shattered Legions.
Yeah, and it's great. It's very, very tactical, as you can already imagine. the amount of combos you can do. So we played it quite quickly once we got the book, but as the days have gone on, we have actually thought of so many combos, and it can actually get very, very brutal on some occasions. I think what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about, I'm just going to choose the Dark Angels one because I have, so I'm just going to go through the hero, the major, the minor, and the floor for the Dark Angels, just for you get a bit of a sense of how these would work and what it would work with. So the champion of Old Caliban is the hero, which is basically now the warlord trait. And this model gains the Monster Hunter special rule. Quite simple. Then we would go into the major, which is Ruthless Bladesman. If the unit is the winner in an assault, each unit that lost suffers an additional -1 penalty to the resulting morale check. So that's the obviously the major, and that would go if the unit has more models of Dark Angels than any other legion. The minor would go then to obviously the one with the least amount of models, Children of the Old Knight. So if the unit has a least amount of Dark Angels, then they would get, this unit makes all snapshots a ballistic skills 2 instead of ballistic skill 1.
Okay.
Quite tasty as well. And lastly, the floor would go again into the minimum amount of models in the unit if it was Dark Angels, for example, and that is bound by the Hackathonitika. I hate the words I hate these words when you're playing Dark Angels. It's bonkers. So even in the direst circumstances, the First Legion keep the council of their own. Reduce the leadership characteristic of all models in this unit by 1. Okay. So as you can see, a negative with the floor itself. Now, obviously, each legion has a separate one. There is some tasty ones. I just want to finish off what DC was saying with the floor of the Night Lords, for example, is if you can only charge at something that is
you outnumber.
That you outnumber. So a Dreadnought only counts for 1 model at the moment, so you can't really charge anything that has 2 or more models.
You can't even charge, from what I understand, you can't even charge 1.
So it says,
because it's outnumbered.
this unit may not declare a charge unless it outnumbers the target unit. So so it has to be. So you can't charge anything. So if you're taking, you wouldn't take a Night Lord Dreadnought, but if you're taking them, just kit them out with 2 arms out. So that's about it for Shattered Legions. More to come, and you can go and check out that bar report after you finish this video, before you finish the video, and let us know what you think of the Shattered Legions. Exciting times, I think. I think a lot of people will be enjoying the Shattered Legions in the next few months. But next up, we will go into the Black Shields. Again, a lot of changes coming up.
So on the Black Shields, now I actually learned a lot about Black Shields I didn't realize going forward. I didn't read too much into Black Shields before this book. I just knew they knew they existed, but I thought they were simply Marines or Legionnaires that were in the traitor legions but didn't want to be part of Horus's uprising. So they discarded their armor, but didn't want to join a whole other legion, as in like take up their culture, take up their colors and everything else. So they instead just painted their armor black, much like the Death Watch in 40k, and then kind of did a duty of service to carry on fighting for the Emperor, but as a black shield. Didn't realize that it's far more than that, and it goes both ways and other ways as well. So the Black Shields actually, they can have the standard, I guess, template of what I think a Black Shield was. I think what most people think a Black Shield is, which is that idea of a loyalist fighting, almost like, again, in a guerrilla style, fighting company or battalion or whatever it might be against traitor forces. There are actually things like you can have traitors that are Black Shields that have just become renegades. And they're just going out as mercenaries. They're fighting both traitors and loyalists. There's even, it says in there, in terms of the law, there's even a group that kind of just went, you know what, I don't want any of this. I'm not interested in heresy at all. And they dawned back to the old grey of the Crusades, and then went just back on the Crusades prior, obviously, to the Horus Heresy, and just started conquering worlds again for the Imperium of Man. And then later on, they've come and refound these worlds, and they've said, "Oh yeah, warriors in grey came and conquered us."
Amazing. That's another thing I like of the book as well. That both the Shattered Legions and obviously these guys, the fluff is there as well. So if you haven't read about them, you've got a couple of pages of
it really fleshed it out, and I thought, wow, okay, it's opened it up, and we've got some great illustrations that it's almost like, it kind of reminds me of back in 40k in previous editions, you could create your own custom chapters or Chaos Warbands, and then they had their own, you could pick which rules you wanted. And it's a similar kind of feeling.
Yeah, the new rules are very similar to that as well. Yeah. So they work very differently. You now choose oaths. You have to choose 2 oaths for your list. Now, it specifically says that please don't go changing. So if it's an event, you have to have these oaths in your battle list and not be changing every game. So you can't be changing depending on what you play against. So always have the oaths before you actually play the game.
There's a lot of oaths as well.
There's a lot of oaths. So oaths, basically, like DC has already stated, changes the game of how your playing style for the Black Shields themselves are. And
it's really, the customization is really nice. And what I like about it is that I've always been a fan of like some smaller underdog war bands or anything else. And the idea that I could create my own kind of essentially custom company or chapter. I know this is a bit of a tangent, but it's me after all. In 40k, there is a small bit of lore about a warband called the True Sons. And essentially, they're a Chaos Space Marine warband, but they didn't kneel to Abaddon. They carried on almost worshipping Horus as a deity type figure, and carried on wearing the livery of Sons of Horus, and just carried on. They ended up being called the Thrice Cursed, because they were cursed by the Imperium, cursed by Abaddon, and then there's an extra curse in there.
No one liked them.
No one liked them, but I love that concept of that warband just doing their own thing and sticking to what they believed in, what they know, and having the fact that Black Shields can do the same. Is amazing. You could have like a company of Space Wolves, for example, that just don't want anything to do with the war and just going off doing their own thing with their own livery and their own
it's like war bands. It's basically 40k war bands.
Yeah, it's very cool.
So, and again, like I pointed before, it's great diversity for the Heresy itself, because it's not only legions against legions, it's other armies. They might be Marines, or they are Marines, but obviously with much different approach to the game than normal. I'm just going to go into one of the oaths just to give you a rough idea of what these oaths would do. And remember, you can choose 2 of these oaths. So I'm going to go for the Spoils of Victory, for example. A unit that includes any models with this oath may not make sweeping advances. However, whenever such a unit would otherwise be eligible to and capable of making a sweeping advance, the controlling player must instead roll a d6. On the result of a 4+, the controlling player gains 1 victory point. So little perks here and there. So if you go into a very close combat orientated army, this would maybe be one of the oaths that you would take. And it says, note that units that are not normally allowed to make a sweeping advance, such as models with the heavy unit subtype or the Legion Cataphracti Terminators, cannot benefit from this oath. So just little pointers here and there, which I like, because this is what creates FAQs later on as we go ahead. So that's a little brief information about the Black Shields itself. Very different to what we used to play with them, and a lot of diversity building the list itself. With so many oaths, you can actually build around the oaths exactly the same as you're building around the major and the floors.
It just goes back to the one of my loves of the hobby is that creativity, where you can create your own story, create your own warband with their own scheme and everything else, and it fits now in the narrative of Horus Heresy. I quite like that.
Perfect. So next up, we're going to finish basically the review off with the Solo Auxilia and touch base on some of the characters in the book as well. So next up, the Solo Auxilia, the new plastic boys, which everybody is excited about. We do have a separate video where we talk to Benji. I talk to Benji about obviously his introduction to the Horus Heresy with the Solo Auxilia, with his new scheme and where he's actually taken this army to. He will be part of the campaign as well. So if you want to check out Benji's road to Horus Heresy, we're going to call it that, you can check that video out. So the Solo Auxilia, we do have obviously the main book with all of its rules, but we do have some extra stuff coming towards them. Extra rules, extra units, and something that is very cool in this book is that they can actually now, they could before, when they ally to certain legions, they have an extra rule. So they have a rule on top of a rule, which is great because Solo Auxilia really need it. So these are called the Solo Auxilia Legions Auxilia. So each legion has a special rule for depending what you're allying to. So the Dark Angels, the Emperor, everybody has an alliance to the Solar Auxilia with an extra perk if you're allied with a certain. So in the battle report itself, I am allied to Ultramarines.
Yes.
And basically, I think what that did was that if any of the Solar Auxilia actually did a wound or a hull point to any vehicle or unit, if an Ultramarines unit charges that unit that has lost a wound or a hull point to the Solar Auxilia, they basically have to snap fire as a reaction instead of shooting normally. So little perks here and there. I think it's very cool, and it helps out the Solar Auxilia a lot. Any help is welcome. And I think something like this, apart from being very cool and obviously helping them out, is very fluffy as well.
I like it. I like it.
So, like I said, every legion has one. We won't go over each one.
There is one I read about. The Sons of Horus have the Headhunters, which is their own cohort, and they're all like in red.
Yeah, War Masters Spites. So, do you want me to read the word?
Do it.
So, they're called the War Master Spites, and when a friendly unit containing one or more models with the Legionnaires Astartes Sons of Horus special rule declares a charge against an enemy unit which has one or more models removed as casualties as a result of a shooting attack made by a model with the Legionnaires Auxilia Sons of Horus special rule, in the same game turn, the charging unit adds +2 to the result of the charge distance roll.
Wow.
So we are seeing a lot of like similarities in the sense that if the Solar Auxilia help you out in removing models, the Legion would get a buff against the unit. So very cool, and +2 to the charge result is pretty strong, pretty good. Now we're going to move on to some extra units. We're not going to go very in depth because I want to leave this for the campaign itself, where Benji is expanding on his army. So we will get and delve into these separate units a bit more. So in the book itself, we've got a where is it? The Solar Auxilia Life Ward section, which starts at 50 points. So we've got that as a new rules in the book. Great. We've got this is where it gets very cool. So there's 3 different types of Sentinels. We've seen the heavy already. Everybody's seen it, but there's 2 more. There's a light version and a sort of medium-sized version. So I'm going to go into the light version because I think that people are going to be very interested in this. So they are 50 points. 4-2, and very small little skirmish ones. Cute. And we haven't seen the model, so I can't really be very excited about. But there is some pictures in here at the same time, and you can take up to, how much was it? An additional 8 Auxilia protectors, so they are called protectors, I guess. And for a total of 20 points more each. They've got battle hardened one. The chosen warriors. Oh, sorry. This is the wrong one. It's 18 points each. It's 50 points, and it brings 2. So the first 2 are 25 points each. The battle hardened is for basically the life ward section, which I think you'll be interested in as well. So you can have up to an additional 4 of these light sentinels. So units of 6. They just have a 4-up save, but they're pretty fast. They move 10, and you can have them with the grenade launcher. It comes with the multi-laser. It comes with the multi-laser, and you can upgrade them to have grenade launchers, which I think is where you really want to go if you go meta-wise, depicted on this. And 18 points each. Then we have the Hermes Veletaris Squadron, which is like a medium-sized one. It comes to 65 points for 2 and 24 points each. And again, you can have an extra 4 in this. So very cool, different units that you will see in the Heresy. So imagine little squadrons of little sentinels. How cool would those be? Cool. And then obviously we've got the Heavy Sentinel Squadron, which we've already seen. And they did fix up the Melter Lance. It does have Heavy 1 Armor Bane ranged, which in the little book that brings in the Battle Force set, it just had Heavy 1 Armor Bane, didn't have it was ranged or not. So that's cleared it up. And apart from that, it does have some other tasty little bits. And I think we're all going to be very, very excited about. It does have a sort of, what is it called? Rite of War. No, these are basically like a Rite of War. I keep forgetting what are they called? Cohorts, that's one. I don't play Solar Auxilia, so sorry about that. So they do have 2 different cohorts, which is basically what you choose before playing the Solar Auxilia. The Wiz one especially made for the likes of the Sentinels, which makes, for example, the detachment using the cohort doctrine may select solely auxiliary Hermes light Sentinels, which are the small ones, as troop choices, and the solely auxiliary Hermes light Sentinel squadron selected as compulsory troop choices gain the line unit subtype.
Nice.
So you will see small units of Sentinels with line capturing objectives, which again helps out the Solar Auxilia a lot.
Reminds me of the Matrix, you know, those ones in the last bit of the Matrix.
I can't show you, but there's little. The problem is we haven't got the book yet, so we can't show you pictures of what we have here because my name is splattered all over the PDF for NDA reasons. But yeah, cool stuff, cool units coming, and apart from that, we do have obviously some characters in the book itself. Again, we're not going to dwell into the characters itself, but there is a little. We have one. We still haven't built it. Again, it just arrived a couple of days ago.
Endred Har.
So one of the specific Black Shield characters. And again, we will see some of these characters in the campaign itself, where we will go into some more depth about their rules itself. But
who's going to paint this? Benji.
Benji's going to paint it, yeah. But again, there is, I think it was like, I can quickly check, I think there's like 5 different characters.
Yeah, there's quite a few.
I'm quickly going to tell you, just in case you've missed it, I think they actually said who they were. So we've got Horus, Amixmad, we've got Tybalt Mar, we've got Hebo Khan, we've got Shadak Medusan, Endred Har, and then we've got the Legion Company Command Squad, which fingers crossed comes out in plastic very soon as well. So yeah, new units, new rules galore of Heresy throughout. Exciting times, I think, for everybody. And now that this is finished, you can switch this off and go and check the battle reports out, which we did make a slight mistake on the battle report itself. We're using the armor penetration for the Iron Warriors
as AP.
AP
I just read it as armor penetration, armor piercing.
Instead of armor penetration. It didn't make any difference in the game itself, but we do actually talk about it wrongly in the battle report.
I'll get the helmet of shame.
Yes, you will. So that's the end. Hope you've enjoyed the review. And I'm
going to start Black Shield's army, I think.
Black Shields, and obviously the campaign coming very, very soon. With that said, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next review.